It'll be my last hurrah for you.
Well, you don't know what we're going to do next.
20 years.
20 years. Well, I tell you, this is 10 years, but it has been 20. I think when did this actually all begin? I don't know, Vasilios,
Well,
when?
I made a note.
What was your date?
April 15th, 98 was the first language committee that Vasilios hosted that I went to.
Okay.
April 15th, 98.
And I got involved in 2001.
Very good.
He still got his-
writing things down.
It's the same notebook.
Actually, I cheated a bit in that I wrote a book on SystemVerilog with Stu and Peter Flake, and one of my contributions was I wrote a history of SystemVerilog, actually Superlog, as we call it. And actually, this morning, on the plane, I read through that again to try and remember a little bit of the history.
Did you when we were doing the Superlog work, did you borrow from that work in the late 90s?
What do you mean?
We're all from
Did you
Superlog?
did it leverage how you approached what you did with Superlog?
It came from the other way, really, because I've been involved with other languages before, and it was this idea of evolving, and we tried to evolve Verilog with C, and actually it's Dave Rich that sorted this out, because I wanted to get rid of a lot of the horrible stuff in Verilog, and Dave Rich said we were stupid. We had to make it be completely compatible, and then over time you could get rid of bits that don't change the language. And so, and we evolved that.
Over time, get rid of it works.
Def params are now gone?
One thing, I mean, we wanted to.
No, they're still there, don't believe it.
Of course, they did not go away.
Yeah.
So the idea is, to evolve it. And then what happened actually is, I don't know how we got invited to Vasilios' meeting, but there was people presenting evolving Java as an HDL.
Yes.
Evolving C, C++ as an
Oslavia,
HDL.
where's Oz? He's somewhere in one of these.
He's somewhere in the building somewhere.
I told him to come here, but he's staying away.
And we were firmly believers that it had to be Verilog that needed to evolve. And so there were the three different main factions, and which actually went for probably about a year, I think, of complex discussions about how things should go.
I think Oz was representing his work. It was a November '99 publication of his view of
18 months. So 18 months we'd been arguing about it.
Yeah. And I don't know if we're making any progress. Vasilios, how did we make progress?
I don't remember. It's been a while. All I know is I think we came up with the ideas of doing the verification side of it. We did the assertion side of it. We started the OVL committee. The assertion came from Intel. I don't know why Intel was not on the board here, because they're part of this activities too.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of discussions on where to go. Java did not make my mind at all at that time.
Thank you.
I forgot what was the Oslavia side, but I don't think we considered that. So the things that attracted me with Superlog is the interface, and that's what really made me gung-ho about it.
Excellent.
So now it's decided to get very aggressive in driving that.
That was a shock to a lot of us.
Yeah, so we acquired Co-Design, Simon's company.
Well, you were aggressive before then.
Yes, but we were trying to figure out how to really make it happen. It was a real challenge, actually, from the Co-Design guys.
I think the customers were putting pressure that things had to change. People needed a better way of doing things.
Things do tend to happen when customers put pressure.
And I think that's why Synopsys was out there looking to solve the problem. And I think luckily we came along. And
well, we had a press event in New Orleans, and I think Intel stood and talked, and they said, if make the standard, you build tools, we'll buy them. And that was like gold rush. It kind of set a lot of things in motion. I don't think we've ever repeated that, by the way. So I don't know. We haven't approached any of the other standards that way, Rich, where there's just been this groundswell of user support to move in a particular direction.
I think it's always important to have the users behind any standard, because without it, It never goes anywhere. I think in general, in the EDA area, the large EDA companies have been the guys who have done a lot of the blocking and tackling. But now that I'm not in any of these companies, I can speak freely, I guess.
Is your,
There's a lot.
we want about your book from the history of the past
right.
20
There's
years.
a lot of development with the companies driving the standards to form coalitions with customers who have a lot of say in what works and what doesn't in standards. So we are always working to figure out what do our customers want and how can we bring them and us and Synopsys into alignment with the same solution, often in opposition to our competition.
Mm-hmm. By the way, if any of you would like to ask questions as well, or if you don't want to have questions, our panelists can also ask you questions too. Like, is the BNF finished, Brad? You know, have we? So if this can go both ways. Randy.
Yeah, I got a question for Vasilius because I know he's been involved in information standards both as a customer. We need to have a microphone.
Yeah, Vasilius has been in both sides of the standards fence as a customer.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, he's been a customer and a supplier. Randy, continue.
Yeah, so given that you've seen it from both sides, I'd like to hear your view of those roles and which side should be pushing harder.
So Randy says, as noticed, he's seen them from both sides and would like Vasilios to comment on his perspective of that and which side ought to be pushing harder. Well, which one maybe has he liked the most?
Yeah, it's the users need to push harder. So if you look at all the committee leaders that I selected, they were coming from the system users. So one from HP, one from Intel, one from IBM. So all those were selected directly to drive the standards. Because the EDA has different direction usually. I come from EDA. The different directions towards certain bias, and usually the users have not as much bias, but at least they have some bias. But from the users community, they try to address what they need, what they require, which is usually different than what the supplier will do.
There are some losers, at least when you made the transition. I think AT&T and Deutsche Telekom lost out on our daily morning calls with each other. So
exactly.
There was a revenue drop there. Maybe also the wine industry, I don't know.
Right.
But Karen, you inherited something that was taking off, and yet there was this demand, pent up demand to continue to evolve what is there. And how has that been, and where are we at today on that? I mean, there's been another release of a standard, obviously, or a couple, but there's more even, I think, that people want as well, right?
Well, what it was with after the first release of SystemVerilog went out, because the acceleration, the assertions group had taken so long, there'd been almost a year and a half of non-forward progress in the other subcommittees. And so the vendors were hoping that SystemVerilog would stay quiescent for a while and let the industry adopt it. And the user community had all this other stuff they wanted fixed that they haven't been able to do for about 18 months. So it was interesting trying to navigate that and move it to the point that we could begin to get stuff fixed in the subcommittees. The same has been somewhat true this time, except that because all of the development pushed up to the end of the last standard, we've been able to sit for a little while without an immediate, oh my goodness, the definition of an if statement is wrong, and take a little time, give the industry an opportunity to catch up with the standard. And at this point, we'll decide on Friday if we are ready to go forward and take some new changes. The last discussion that we did have about potential new changes was to look at maybe doing two standards. One that did small fixes of of descriptions and semantics that's already there, and potentially one about a year later that would have some new features in it. So that was one of the possibilities that was on the agenda, and we'll have to discuss and make plans on Friday.
Well, not being static, but being somewhat stable, I would say, has led to some things that are good as well, Tom Alsop. I think UVM has made its way here. It's built a methodology or a framework around SystemVerilog, and I think Tom's joined you as a dot standard for 1800. I don't know if, Tom, you have any comments or questions about that you'd like to make, but certainly. Okay, so. So there's obviously quite a bit that's happened in terms of ecosystem, things that buttress and support this. I was amazed. Yat and I have always looked at the slides of the number of companies supporting this, or the DAC events where we had people that were talking about products that were present.
Well, you remember the first one right here, right now, where
Yeah.
we were proving there was support for SystemVerilog. I'd gone out and bought a lap clock for pools, one of these big clocks. And we had so many people that I needed to limit them to 1 minute each. So we had a long line of companies waiting to get up to the pedestal and introduce their device or their solution. We had to pull them all.
It felt like
off.
Shark Tank or something as well.
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
only had 60 seconds to get your point across.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about new ecosystem development. I have spent the last 8 or 9 years working for FPGA companies that, I'm sad to say, didn't really support SystemVerilog.
Well, let's change that.
And what was interesting was the number of customers that we would go into and require SystemVerilog. So we were moving forward, both at Tabula and with some of the sub-pieces of the tools at Microsemi, we're having to move forward to SystemVerilog because it's just endemic in the design community at this point.
Chris?
Making of standards relies very much on the willingness of users to get in a room. The progress on standards requires very much the willingness of users to get in a room with their competitors and talk about their problems. Over the last, say, 10 years, how has the changing landscape of the user community, the semiconductors, the system guys, really changed the nature of that dialogue, the willingness for people to get in a room and talk about their problems, and the dynamics of how people talk about their problems? As we consolidate, as system guys become more prominent, as all of these changes take place.
In SystemVerilog in particular, I've seen, in some of the chairs here should help me out, I've seen more folks bringing solutions than bringing problems. So they're advancing, I would like assertions to be able to have a time component. And so they bring in a language that describes a time component to assertions. There's that more so than I can't figure out how to verify a DDR4 protocol. How do I do it? It's not expressed that way, at least in the context of a SystemVerilog standard.
I might say at a personal level, though, your people, the ones using these things, have wanted those to become resume items. That if they didn't have SystemVerilog or UVM on their resume or in their LinkedIn group, that they might not be with the avant-garde or the people practicing the current state-of-the-art as well. And when there's M&A and things, that type of stuff does have an impact. Stan, you want to talk?
Yeah, I
thought it was said 4 minutes, because it looks like we have 4 minutes.
I just wanted to make a comment to answer the question. I think we're in a golden age of users coming into standards groups in the ADA field. The number that users are going beyond the usual suspects, and don't take this wrong, the Intels and the IBMs, the people who have been there from the very beginning. But if you saw the slides this morning, you saw names like Comcast. Who would have thought Comcast would be in a DAS standard? Microsoft, Microsoft. We got a whole bunches of people, companies that are, at a higher level of abstraction because they're worried about system problems. We've got, some of the older system companies like Ericsson and so forth are still around. But of course, then you also have a whole set of companies that are in the IP exact area. I mean, we've got people I wouldn't have expected, 20 years ago. And so the groups that are starting now are getting more and more, it's becoming a normal thing for user companies to send.
But Stan, how do you take today and juxtapose it to some of these people that took a leap of faith, or asked all of us to take a leap of faith? How was it that Infineon Vasilios decided that this ought to be the right thing without even having it here, without having
And
that
it's a
ecosystem?
VHDL house, too.
Yeah, and it was a VHDL house.
It was a pain. They needed something better.
Must be the magic of V.
The magic of V, yeah.
I think in the beginning, as part of having been there and so forth, I think in the beginning it was EDA companies doing a lot. In the beginning, there were no EDA companies, but there were nascent EDA companies coming, and they were bringing along their customers, and their customers, eventually like Intel, so for example, start being, were able to take a lead. I mean, I was at IBM at one point, and we had so many people and so much money that taking a lead and taking a leap on VHDL and things like that was okay. At this point, I think we've got to the point where users see the absolute requirement to be in standards groups. I mean, why else would a Comcast join system level low power? I mean, it's because they see, well, that's part of my business model. I've got to help figure this out.
One of the other things that we see happening in the broader set of standards is that customers see emerging standards, some of the recent power standards, for example, where each company is implementing something different because they all hear the customer needs, and the customers, much more quickly than they had in the past, come back and say, nope, guys, you guys got to get together. It's got to be one language because I can't handle 4 different ways to say the same thing across 4 different tools. And so the customers do come and say, you're working together on this technology, we're going to have a common language about it.
I think the EDA industry owes a debt to Philippe Magashak for doing that so forcefully in so many different times for the EDA companies, demanding that we work together to solve it. ST.
Indeed. By the way, there's other people in the audience. I think we've noted on slides. I see Matt, you're here. We have leadership that's helped keep focus on the development of a lot of the language as well. And how did we enlist the right talent to help keep focused and motivate the volunteers? It's almost a thankless job trying to herd cats or push string. And then maybe all the back channel discussions that were going on as well. Arturo, I don't know if you're bending arms at Cadence or Mentor or other places, but I know you've had your interactions with people to try to bring a point across and to get people to see things. It's almost like you never gave up. None of us ever gave up, and all the elements may have just come together. A serial entrepreneur who had to get somewhere fast and wasn't willing to wait years, combined with larger companies that were maybe willing to collaborate and consumers willing to buy. Maybe this was just a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence, but maybe all the right seeds were present. Kevin?
Somebody mentioned a meeting on Friday. I was wondering if that was an open meeting or IEEE-SA only, and are there some details available?
Because it is not an official working group, it's a meeting to establish the next working group, it's open.
I can send you
We
the
can send
meeting
you
invite,
information.
Kevin.
No problem.
Yeah.
I can honestly tell you how the synopsis strategy was set and driven in the early days of SystemVerilog. I was responsible for it. I would call V, and V would say, you should do this. And we always did whatever V said, and it worked out perfectly. I'm not kidding.
Well,
That's actually how that
then
worked.
V tells me, so I do it, And then I was asked, do you work for Synopsys?
And I was on the other side going, actually, I don't want to be doing that. I have 3 of them to fight.
Did you ever go visit Vasilios?
I think we bought
Yeah,
some
we
wine
always
sometimes.
start.
We had
Always start.
a few dinners, I think, with wine, I think.
And we're at 16 after the hour right now, aren't we, Stan?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much time to wrap this up.
Yeah,
and,
again, a lot of you out there have been involved in the creation of SystemVerilog, and as Kevin pointed out, there's an opportunity to continue participating in that, and we're doing the organizational meetings to see what ought to happen next, and for everyone that has been instrumental from day zero or year zero 20 years ago. I think the celebration we probably had our 10th anniversary in 2008, given the April 1998 time that you brought up, Simon. I'd like to thank everyone for sharing their experiences, more so even personally, for sharing a professional interaction with you, which is I think beyond compare, and has been very fulfilling to collaborate with competitors and to work collectively together for the better of customers, and many of you there in the audience as well. We're, I think, all invited to continue to do it, Stu, so if you're thinking about editing again? No more, okay. Yeah. That was either an Indian yes or an American.
His head went like this and this.
So, all right, there's a small token of appreciation from the exercise.
Thank you. Appreciate it.